Eleanor's hands trembled as her father's words cut through the silence of his study like a blade through flesh. "You've destroyed this family's name, and I will not have you under this roof another day." She opened her mouth to speak, to defend herself against the lies Thomas Ashworth had spread, but his raised hand silenced her. "The train leaves for New Mexico at dawn. You'll work as a ranch hand until you've learned the cost of shame." Her mother's sobs echoed from the hallway, but her father's eyes held no mercy. Eleanor Wade, once Boston's most celebrated debutante, was being erased from her own life. Before we continue with Eleanor's journey, please subscribe to our channel and stay with us until the very end of this story. Comment below with your city so I can see how far this tale has traveled. Now, let's discover what happened when Eleanor arrived in the unforgiving West. The grandfather clock in the hallway struck midnight, and Eleanor hadn't moved from the chair in her father's study for 3 hours. Her trunk sat at the door, already packed by the household staff who'd avoided her eyes as they'd worked. Margaret, her lady's maid for 10 years, had wept openly while folding Eleanor's silk dresses she'd never wear again. "Eleanor." Her father's voice came from the doorway. He'd returned from his club, smelling of cigars and brandy. "The carriage will be here at 4. She looked at him then, really looked at him, searching for any trace of the man who'd once lifted her onto his shoulders at Sunday picnics. "Papa, I swear to you on Mama's life, I never touched Thomas Ashworth. I never—" "Don't." His hand cut through the air between them. "Thomas's father showed me the letters. In your own hand." "Those letters were forged!" Eleanor stood, her voice rising. "Thomas pursued me for months, and when I refused him, he—" "Enough!" Her father walked to his desk, pulling out an envelope. "This is a letter of introduction to Samuel James. He owns a cattle ranch in New Mexico Territory. You'll work for him, earn your keep through honest labor, instead of destroying honest men's reputations." Eleanor's stomach twisted. "You're sending me to work as a servant? Papa, I'm your daughter." "My daughter died the day she brought scandal to this house." His voice cracked, just slightly, but he steadied himself. The Eleanor Wade I raised would never have been caught in a man's hotel room at midnight. "I went there to return his sister's necklace. She'd left it at our garden party, and Thomas said—" Eleanor's throat closed around the words. What did it matter now? No one believed her. Thomas had crafted his lie perfectly, even producing false witnesses who claimed they'd seen her entering his room willingly. Her father turned away, facing the window that overlooked Beacon Hill. 4 o'clock, Eleanor. Don't make this harder than it already is. She wanted to scream, to throw his precious paperweights through that window, to force him to see the truth. Instead, she walked to the door, pausing only to say, "When you discover I was telling the truth, don't come looking for me." "If that day comes," he said quietly, "I'll have already lost what matters most." Eleanor's mother appeared in her bedroom doorway just after 3. Her eyes were swollen, her hair loose around her shoulders in a way Eleanor had never seen outside her mother's private chambers. "Mama!" "Hush, child." Her mother pressed a small velvet pouch into Eleanor's hands. "This was my grandmother's. Don't let your father know I gave it to you." Eleanor opened the pouch, finding a delicate gold locket inside. "Mama, I can't take this." "You can, and you will." Her mother's hands framed Eleanor's face. "I believe you. I know my daughter's heart. But your father, he's a proud man, Eleanor. The scandal has already cost him 2 major contracts. The Ashworths are powerful and I'm expendable." Eleanor pulled away, shoving the locket into her coat pocket. "I understand perfectly." "No, you don't." Her mother's voice turned sharp. "You think this is about money and reputation. It's about fear. Your father is terrified that if he defends you publicly, The Ashworths will destroy everything he's built. Not just for him, but for your brother's future. For everyone except me." Eleanor grabbed her gloves from the dresser. "The carriage is here." Her mother caught her arm. "Write to me, please, even if you hate us both." Eleanor wanted to refuse, to walk out with her head high and never look back. But her mother's eyes held something her father's hadn't. Doubt. Beautiful, painful doubt that maybe, just maybe, she'd made a terrible mistake. "I'll write," Eleanor whispered. And then she was gone. The train journey took 4 days, each mile carrying Eleanor further from everything she'd known. She shared a compartment with 2 other women heading west, a widow named Ruth seeking work as a schoolteacher, and the young bride named Caroline, traveling to meet her mail-order husband. "What's waiting for you in New Mexico?" Ruth asked on the second day, her kind eyes inviting confidence. Eleanor stared out the window at the passing planes. "Penance." Caroline laughed, thinking it was a joke. "Aren't we all running from something? I'm running from a mother who couldn't accept that I loved a man she deemed unsuitable. Ruth here is running from a town full of memories." "I'm not running," Ruth corrected gently. "I'm walking toward a new life. There's a difference." Eleanor wanted to ask what that difference was, but the words caught in her throat. Was she running, or was she being dragged? That night, unable to sleep as the train rocked through Kansas, Eleanor pulled out the letter her father had given her. She'd read it a dozen times already, memorizing every word of his formal introduction to Samuel James. "This young woman requires firm guidance and honest work to correct certain moral deficiencies. She is educated but lacks practical skills and has been accustomed to a life of leisure. I trust you will put her to proper use and instill in her the values of hard work and humility." Eleanor crumpled the letter in her fist. Moral deficiencies. As if she were diseased. As if the lies Thomas Ashworth had spread were somehow her fault because she'd been foolish enough to trust him. "Can't sleep?" Ruth appeared in the corridor, wrapped in a shawl. Eleanor quickly smoothed the letter out, shoving it back in her bag. "Just thinking." Ruth sat beside her, not asking permission. "I lost my husband 2 years ago. Pneumonia took him in 3 days. The town where we'd lived, his family owned most of it. They expected me to remarry his brother, Harold, a man who'd once cornered me in the barn and suggested I should be friendlier to family." Eleanor turned, fully present now. "What did you do?" "I said no, and suddenly I was ungrateful, disrespectful, a woman who didn't understand her place." Ruth smiled, but there was steel in it. "So I left, sold everything, bought a train ticket, and decided I'd rather teach children their letters in the middle of nowhere than live one more day in a place that thought I owed them my future." "Do you regret it?" Eleanor asked. "Not for 1 second." Ruth squeezed Eleanor's hand. "Whatever you're running from, or walking toward, you get to decide who you are when you arrive. They don't get to write that story." The town of Socorro, New Mexico, looked nothing like Boston. Where Boston had cobblestones and gas lamps, Socorro had dirt streets and buildings that seemed to grow straight out of the desert. The train station was barely more than a platform, and a small office where a man in dusty clothes marked arrivals in a ledger. Eleanor stepped onto the platform, her traveling dress already feeling too heavy in the dry heat. Ruth and Caroline had disembarked at earlier stops, leaving Eleanor alone with her trunk and the crushing weight of uncertainty. "Eleanor Wade?" She turned to find a man approaching, tall and weathered, with eyes that looked like they'd spent years squinting against the sun. He wore dusty work clothes and a hat that had seen better days. "Yes?" Eleanor straightened her spine, refusing to show weakness. "Are you Mr. James?" "Cole Maddox. I'm the foreman at James Ranch. Sam sent me to collect you." He picked up her trunk with one hand, as if it weighed nothing. "Wagons this way." Eleanor followed, her heeled boots clicking awkwardly on the wooden platform. "How far is the ranch?" 3 hours by wagon. We'll need to stop once to water the horses." Cole loaded her trunk, then offered his hand to help her up. She hesitated, looking at his calloused palm, the dirt under his nails. In Boston, she'd have been scandalized to touch such a hand. Now, it was her only way forward. She took it. The wagon lurched forward, and Eleanor gripped the seat to keep from falling. Cole said nothing, just guided the horses onto a road that barely deserved the name. On both sides, the desert stretched endlessly, broken only by scrub brush and distant mesas that shimmered in the heat. "Is it always this hot?" Eleanor asked after 20 minutes of silence. This is spring. Wait till August." Cole's voice held no mockery, just fact. Eleanor pulled out her handkerchief, dabbing at her neck. "Mr. Maddox, what exactly does Mr. James expect me to do?" "Ranch work. Cooking, cleaning, helping with the animals, whatever needs doing." Cole glanced at her. "You ever worked a day in your life?" The question should have insulted her, but his tone was genuinely curious, not cruel. "I've managed a household staff of 12, organized charity events for 300 guests, and balanced account books for my father's business interests. Does that count?" "Managing isn't the same as doing. You ever cooked a meal?" Eleanor's cheeks flushed. "Our cook prepared the meals." "You ever mucked a stall?" "Our stable master, right." Cole returned his attention to the road. "You'll learn." They rode in silence for another hour before Cole pulled the wagon to a stop near a small creek. "Horses need water. Stretch your legs if you want." Eleanor climbed down, her legs stiff from sitting. She walked to the creek's edge, staring at her reflection in the water. Her face looked the same. Same dark hair, same green eyes, same features that had once graced Boston society pages. But something behind those eyes had changed. She looked haunted. "Your father's letter said you needed correction." Cole's voice came from behind her. "Said you'd done something to shame your family." Eleanor stiffened. "And you believed him?" "I didn't say that." Cole crouched beside the creek, filling a canteen. "I said that's what he wrote. I also notice he didn't say what you actually did. Men who tell the whole truth don't usually leave out the details." Eleanor turned, studying this weathered stranger, who somehow saw what her own father hadn't. "Why does it matter to you?" "It doesn't. But you're about to work alongside me and the other hands for God knows how long. I need to know if you're going to be trouble." Cole stood, his eyes meeting hers directly. "So I'll ask you straight. Did you do whatever he's accusing you of?" "No." Eleanor's voice was steady. "I was falsely accused by a man I rejected. He had the power and money to make people believe his lies. My father chose to believe him instead of me." Cole considered this, then nodded once. "Good enough." "That's it? You just believe me?" "I've known my share of liars. You're not one." He walked back to the wagon. "Come on, sun'll be setting soon, and you don't want to see this road in the dark." The James Ranch appeared on the horizon just as the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the desert. It wasn't grand, a main house, a barn, several outbuildings, and the bunkhouse for the ranch hands. But it was solid, built to withstand the harsh climate. Samuel James met them in the yard, a man in his 60s with silver hair and shrewd eyes. "Miss Wade, welcome to James Ranch." Eleanor climbed down from the wagon, every muscle aching. "Thank you for taking me in, Mr. James. Your father's letter was quite specific about your circumstances." Samuel's tone was cool, but not unkind. "I run a working ranch, Miss Wade. Everyone here earns their keep. You'll help Rosa in the kitchen to start. She'll teach you what you need to know." "I understand." Eleanor forced herself to meet his eyes. "I'm willing to work." "We'll see." Samuel turned to Cole. "Show her to Rosa, then check the south fence line. Martinez reported seeing breaks near the canyon." Cole gestured for Eleanor to follow. He led her to a small adobe building behind the main house, where smoke rose from a chimney and the smell of cooking meat drifted through the open door. "Rosa," Cole called. "Got your new helper?" A woman emerged, small and sturdy, with gray-streaked black hair pulled back in a bun. Her eyes swept over Eleanor, taking in the expensive traveling dress, the impractical boots, the soft hands that had never seen real labor. "Dios mío," Rosa muttered. "Another one." "Another one?" Eleanor asked. "Samuel's had 3 projects before you. Rich girls sent west to learn humility." Rosa wiped her hands on her apron. 2 lasted a week. 1 made it 3 months before running back to wherever she came from. She stepped closer, her eyes sharp. "How long you think you'll last?" Eleanor thought about her father's study, about Thomas Ashworth's smug face as he destroyed her reputation, about her mother's tears that changed nothing. She thought about Ruth on the train, choosing to write her own story. "As long as it takes," Eleanor said quietly. Rosa's expression shifted, just slightly. "We'll see. Cole, go do your work. I've got this one now." She pointed at Eleanor's dress. "You can't cook in that. Come inside. I'll find you something that won't catch fire." That first night, Eleanor lay in a narrow bed in a room barely larger than a closet, listening to unfamiliar sounds. Somewhere, a coyote howled. The wind rattled the window frame. In the distance, someone played a guitar, the notes melancholic and strange. She pulled out her mother's locket, opening it to find a tiny portrait inside. Her mother as a young woman, before marriage, before Boston society had taught her to choose survival over truth. Eleanor snapped the locket shut and tucked it under her pillow. Then she closed her eyes and tried to imagine who she might become in this place where no one knew Eleanor Wade, Boston debutante, where no one cared about the scandal or the shame. She had no idea it would be Cole Maddox who would show her the answer. But that discovery was still weeks away, hidden behind calloused hands, sunrise lessons in survival, and the slow, terrifying realization that sometimes exile wasn't a punishment at all. Sometimes it was mercy. Eleanor woke to hands shaking her shoulder, and Rosa's voice cutting through the darkness. "Up, now! Breakfast doesn't cook itself!" The room was still black, the window showing no hint of dawn. Eleanor's body screamed in protest as she sat up, every muscle stiff from the wagon ride. "What time is it?" 4:30. The men eat at 5. Rosa thrust a bundle of clothes at her. "Wear these. Your fancy dress is no good here." Eleanor dressed in the darkness, fumbling with a rough cotton dress and apron Rosa had left. Her fingers, accustomed to silk and buttons, struggled with the simple ties. By the time she stumbled into the kitchen, Rosa already had 3 pots going on the stove and was kneading dough with fierce efficiency. "Can you crack eggs without getting shells everywhere?" Rosa asked without looking up. "I can try." "Don't try, do." Rosa pointed to a basket on the counter. 2 dozen, in that bowl. Go." Eleanor picked up the first egg, tapped it against the bowl's edge, and watched half the shell crumble into the yolk. Rosa's disgusted sigh told her everything. "Like this." Rosa took an egg, cracked it one-handed against the bowl, and the perfect contents slid out. "You have 2 hands. Use your brain." 20 minutes later, Eleanor had managed 18 eggs with minimal shell damage. Her hands were sticky, her back ached from bending over the counter, and Rosa had already finished the biscuits, fried the bacon, and started the gravy. Set the table. Plates there, forks there. The men eat fast, and they eat a lot. Keep the coffee coming, or they'll complain. The ranch hands arrived exactly at 5, a stream of weathered men who barely glanced at Eleanor as they took their seats. Cole came in last, his hair wet like he'd dunked his head in the water trough. "Coffee," one of the men grunted, holding up his cup. Eleanor grabbed the pot, her hands shaking slightly as she poured. The coffee sloshed over the rim, pooling on the table. "Careful!" the man jerked back. "You trying to burn me?" "I'm sorry, Just bring a rag." Cole's voice cut through her apology. He caught her eye for a second, his expression unreadable, then returned to his plate. Eleanor fetched a rag, cleaned the spill, and made it through the rest of breakfast without disaster. The men ate in near silence, shoveling food like they were fueling machines, not enjoying a meal. When they finished, they filed out without a word of thanks, leaving behind empty plates and crumpled napkins. "They always like that?" Eleanor asked as she stacked dishes. "They work hard. They eat hard. They don't waste time on niceties." Rosa scraped leftovers into a bucket. "You wash, I'll dry. Then we start on lunch." "Lunch? But we just finished breakfast." Rosa looked at her like she'd said something stupid. "You think food cooks itself? Lunch needs to be ready by noon. That gives us 6 hours to prepare, and we've got laundry and cleaning to do before then." Eleanor's hands plunged into the scalding dishwater, and she bit back a yelp as her skin turned red. Rosa said nothing, just handed her a bar of lye soap that smelled like punishment. "Why does Mr. James keep taking in women like me?" Eleanor asked as she scrubbed a skillet. "Because he's a fool with a soft heart." Rosa's tone softened slightly. "His daughter ran away 15 years ago, married some gambler against Samuel's wishes. He hasn't seen her since. So now he thinks he can save other men's daughters, prove he's not the hard man who drove his own child away." "Did he? Drive her away?" Rosa shrugged. "Sarah was wild, wanted things Samuel couldn't give her. Sometimes people leave because they're running toward something, not away from it." Eleanor thought of Ruth on the train, walking toward a new life. And the other women he brought here? Where did they run to? Back home, mostly. One married a merchant in town. Another took a stage to California. Rosa glanced at Eleanor. "What about you? Where will you run?" "I can't go back." Eleanor's hands stilled in the water. "There's nothing left for me there." "Then you'd better learn fast, because this life doesn't forgive slow learners." By noon, Eleanor's feet throbbed in boots that weren't made for standing all day. She'd burned her hand on the stove, cut her finger chopping vegetables, and spilled flour across the entire kitchen floor. But lunch was ready when the men came in, and no one complained about the food. "Rosa says you're to help with the laundry this afternoon," Cole said as he headed back out. "Meet her at the wash house in 10 minutes. The wash house was a small building with massive tubs and a fire pit for heating water. Rosa already had 2 tubs steaming when Eleanor arrived. "You ever done laundry?" Rosa asked, though her tone suggested she knew the answer. "I supervise the laundry maids." "Supervising isn't doing. Watch." Rosa plunged a work shirt into the tub, scrubbed it against a washboard with brutal efficiency, wrung it out, and tossed it into the rinse water. "Your turn." Eleanor grabbed a shirt and tried to copy Rosa's movements. The washboard scraped her knuckles raw. The water was too hot. The shirt was too heavy when soaked. She scrubbed until her arms burned, wrung it out with shaking hands, and held it up to show Rosa. "You missed the collar and both sleeves. Do it again." 2 hours later, Eleanor's hands were bleeding. Her dress was soaked, and she'd washed maybe 1/10 of what Rosa had managed. Every muscle screamed. Sweat dripped into her eyes. She wanted to cry, to scream, to throw the damn washboard across the yard. "I can't do this." The words slipped out before she could stop them. Rosa looked up from hanging clothes on the line. "Then quit." "What?" "Quit. Go tell Samuel you're done. He'll give you money for a stage ticket. You can be back in Boston in a week." Rosa's eyes were hard. "But if you stay, you don't get to say, 'I can't.' You say, 'I'll learn.'" Eleanor stared at the half-washed shirt in her hands, at her bleeding knuckles, at the mountain of laundry still waiting. She thought about her father's study, about Thomas Ashworth's lies, about becoming the woman everyone expected her to be, weak, helpless, broken. "I'll learn," she whispered. Rosa's expression didn't change, but something in her posture eased. "Then finish that shirt properly. We've got 30 more to go." Dinner was quieter than breakfast. The men were tired, focused on eating and getting to bed. Eleanor moved between the kitchen and the table in a daze, her body running on pure stubbornness. Cole lingered after the others left, nursing his coffee. "You did all right today." Eleanor almost laughed. "I ruined breakfast, destroyed half the laundry, and nearly burned down the kitchen. That's all right?" "You're still here. That's more than the others managed on day one." He stood, carrying his cup to the sink. "Rosa works you hard because she's testing you. She wants to see if you'll break." "Why does she care?" "Because she broke once, long time ago." Cole headed for the door, then paused. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow's harder." Eleanor helped Rosa clean the kitchen in silence, too exhausted for conversation. When she finally collapsed into bed, her body was a map of pain. Blisters on her hands, burns on her arms, muscles that felt like they'd been beaten with hammers. But she'd survived day one. Day two started the same. 4:30 wake up, breakfast chaos, lunch preparation, laundry, dinner service. Day three added chicken feeding and egg collecting, which seemed simple until one of the hens pecked Eleanor's hand hard enough to draw blood, and she dropped half the eggs. "They smell fear," Rosa said, not helpfully, as Eleanor salvaged what she could. Day four, Samuel appeared in the kitchen during lunch preparation. "Cole needs help moving cattle to the east pasture. You're going with him." Eleanor looked down at her flour-covered apron. "I don't know anything about cattle." "Then you'll learn. Go change into something you can ride in." 15 minutes later, Eleanor stood in the stable wearing borrowed trousers that hung loose on her hips and a shirt that smelled like horse. Cole was saddling 2 horses, moving with the easy confidence of someone who'd done this 10,000 times. "You ever ridden?" he asked. "I've ridden in Central Park, side saddle, at a gentle trot." Cole's mouth twitched like he might smile. "This won't be like Central Park. This is Daisy. She's old, she's slow, and she doesn't tolerate nonsense. Perfect for you." He helped Eleanor into the saddle, adjusting her stirrups. His hands were impersonal, efficient, but Eleanor felt her cheeks flush anyway. She'd been touched by dancing partners in ballrooms, by doctors during examinations, but never by someone whose hands were this worn, this real. "Reins in your left hand, heels down. When you want to turn, use your legs more than your hands. Daisy knows her job. You just have to not fall off." They rode out toward the east pasture, where a small herd of cattle grazed. 2 other ranch hands were already there. Martinez, who'd barely spoken to Eleanor, and a younger man named Ben, who'd smiled at her once over breakfast. "We're moving them to fresh grass," Cole explained. "Stay on the outside, keep them grouped. Don't get between the cattle and the fence. If a cow breaks away, let one of us handle it." It sounded simple. It wasn't. The cattle moved like a living, chaotic mass, each animal with its own agenda. Eleanor tried to stay on the outside, like Cole had said, but Daisy had other ideas, cutting in close to head off a wayward calf. Eleanor grabbed the saddle horn, her heart hammering. "Sit back! Use your legs!" Cole shouted from across the herd. Eleanor tried, but her legs were already trembling from gripping the saddle. A cow suddenly veered toward her, and Daisy sidestepped fast. Eleanor lost her balance, sliding sideways, the ground rushing up. Hands caught her waist, steadying her back into the saddle. Cole had ridden up beside her, one hand on her waist, the other on his reins. "You all right?" Eleanor nodded, not trusting her voice. Cole's hand lingered for a second longer than necessary. Then he pulled away, returning to his position. They moved the cattle without further incident, but Eleanor's hands were shaking by the time they reached the new pasture. Cole rode up beside her as the others headed back to the ranch. "Not bad for your first time." "I almost fell off." "But you didn't. That's what matters." He studied her face, and Eleanor wondered what he saw. "You're stronger than you think you are." "I'm not strong. I'm just too stubborn to quit." "Same thing out here." Cole turned his horse. "Come on. Rosa will have our heads if we're late for dinner." That night, Eleanor discovered new muscles to ache. Her inner thighs screamed from gripping the saddle. Her lower back felt like it had been twisted into knots. But when she closed her eyes, she didn't see her father's disappointed face or Thomas Ashworth's smug expression. She saw Cole's hand catching her waist, keeping her from falling. 2 weeks passed in a blur of early mornings and exhausted nights. Eleanor learned to crack eggs without shells, to scrub laundry without bleeding, to feed chickens without getting pecked. She learned the names of all the ranch hands: Martinez, Ben, Old Pete, who barely had teeth left, and Johnny, who couldn't have been more than 16. She learned that Cole rose before everyone else, checking the horses and planning the day's work. That Rosa had been married once, but her husband had died in a mining accident. That Samuel read his daughter's letters from 15 years ago when he thought no one was watching. She learned that her hands could callous over, that her back could stop aching, that she could fall into bed exhausted and wake up ready to do it all again. And she learned that Cole Maddox was watching her, though he never said why. It was Rosa who finally addressed it, 3 weeks into Eleanor's stay. They were in the kitchen, preparing bread for the next day, and Rosa's sharp eyes caught Eleanor glancing out the window, where Cole was working with a new horse in the corral. "He looks at you different than he looked at the others." Eleanor's hands stilled in the dough. "I don't know what you mean." "Yes, you do." Rosa shaped her loaf with practiced efficiency. "The other girls Samuel brought here. Cole was polite, helpful when needed, but distant. With you, he lingers, checks on you, makes sure you're managing. He's just being kind. Cole Maddox is many things. Kind isn't high on the list." Rosa slid her loaf into the pan. "He's a good man, but he's been hurt. His wife died 4 years ago. Childbirth. Lost the baby, too." Eleanor felt something cold settle in her chest. "I didn't know." "Why would you? He doesn't talk about it. Doesn't talk about much of anything personal." Rosa covered the loaves with a cloth. "But he's talking to you, more than I've heard him talk to anyone in years." Eleanor wanted to deny it, but she couldn't. Over the past weeks, Cole had started sharing small pieces of himself. Stories about growing up in Texas, about learning to break horses from his grandfather, about coming to New Mexico after the war. Nothing deep, nothing painful, but more than he gave anyone else. "I'm not here for that," Eleanor said quietly. "I'm here to work, to prove I'm not what they said I was." "And what did they say you were?" Eleanor's hands pressed into the dough, kneading harder than necessary. "A whore. A liar. A woman who destroyed a good man's reputation because I couldn't control myself. Rosa was quiet for a long moment. And what do you say you are? I don't know anymore. Eleanor's voice cracked. I used to know exactly who Eleanor Wade was. Now I'm just someone who can almost keep up with the laundry. That's more than most people can say. Rosa touched Eleanor's shoulder briefly. Give it time. Out here, you become who you need to be, not who someone else decided you were. The letter arrived on a Thursday, delivered by the mail rider who came through once a week. Samuel brought it to Eleanor in the kitchen, his expression carefully neutral. It's from Boston, he said, handing her the envelope. Eleanor recognized her mother's handwriting immediately. Her hand shook as she opened it, aware that Rosa and Samuel were both pretending not to watch. My dearest Eleanor, I pray this letter finds you well, though I fear I have no right to expect your wellness after what we've done. Your father has discovered the truth about Thomas Ashworth. The man's sister, do you remember Catherine? Came forward after her conscience finally defeated her fear. She confessed that Thomas had paid her to lie, to say she'd witnessed you entering his hotel room willingly. Your father went to the Ashworth estate yesterday. I don't know what was said, but he returned home and locked himself in his study. He's written you a letter which I've enclosed. I haven't read it. Whatever he says, know that I've never stopped believing in you. We cannot undo what's been done, but perhaps we can begin to make amends. If you choose to return home, your father will ensure your reputation is fully restored. The Ashworths will issue a public apology. Write to me, even if only to say you received this. I need to know you're alive and whole. Your loving mother. Eleanor's hands trembled as she opened the second envelope, her father's letter. His handwriting was shaky, not the firm script she remembered. Eleanor, I have failed you in the most fundamental way a father can fail his child. I chose my pride and fear over your truth. I sent you away when I should have fought for you. There are no words sufficient to express my shame. Thomas Ashworth will face consequences for what he's done. His father has agreed to make a public statement exonerating you completely. Your reputation will be restored. You may return home whenever you wish. I understand if you cannot forgive me. I'm not certain I can forgive myself. Your father. Eleanor stood motionless, the letters shaking in her hands. Everything she'd wanted, vindication, apology, the restoration of her good name was right here. She could go home, be Eleanor Wade of Boston again, wear silk dresses and attend parties and pretend the last month had never happened. What does it say? Rosa's voice was gentle. They know the truth now, about Thomas Ashworth's lies. Eleanor's voice sounded hollow. My father wants me to come home. Samuel cleared his throat. I won't keep you here if you want to leave. You've worked hard, earned your passage back if that's what you choose. Eleanor looked around the kitchen, at the scarred wooden table where she'd learned to knead bread, at the stove that had burned her a dozen times, at Rosa's face, which had softened from stern to almost motherly over the past weeks. I need to think, she managed, and fled to her small room. She lay on the narrow bed, staring at the ceiling, her mother's locket pressed against her palm. Everything she'd lost was being offered back to her. Everything she'd been was waiting to be reclaimed. But she wasn't that Eleanor anymore. That woman had soft hands and easy answers and the life built on what other people thought of her. This Eleanor had calluses and burns and muscles that knew what real work felt like. This Eleanor had looked into Cole Maddox's eyes and seen something she'd never seen in Boston's ballrooms. Respect earned through sweat instead of bestowed through birth. A knock on her door interrupted her spiraling thoughts. "Eleanor? It's Cole. Can I come in?" She sat up, wiping her eyes quickly. "Yes." He entered, his hat in his hands, looking uncomfortable in the small space. "Samuel told me about the letters. I wanted to check on you." "I'm fine." "You're a terrible liar." He sat on the edge of her bed, careful to leave distance between them. "This is good news, isn't it? Your name cleared? Your family wanting you back?" "Yes." Eleanor's voice was barely a whisper. "It's everything I wanted." "So why do you look like someone died?" Eleanor laughed, but it came out broken. "Because I did. The woman who boarded that train from Boston, she's gone. And I don't know if I want to bring her back." Cole was quiet for a long moment. "Can I tell you something? About my wife?" Eleanor nodded, not trusting her voice. "Her name was Sarah, same as Samuel's daughter. That's how we met, actually. I thought she was Samuel's girl coming home." He twisted his hat in his hands. "She was beautiful, smart, full of life. We got married too fast, had a baby too soon. She died trying to give me a son." His voice cracked. "For 2 years after, I just existed. Went through the motions, worked until I couldn't think anymore. And then one day, I realized I had a choice. I could keep being the man I was when she was alive, or I could become someone new, someone who carried her with me, but wasn't destroyed by losing her." "Which did you choose?" Eleanor asked. "Both. Neither. I'm still figuring it out." He met her eyes. "But I know this. The woman who showed up here a month ago wouldn't have lasted 3 days. The woman sitting here now could run this ranch if she wanted to. That's not nothing, Eleanor. What if going back erases all of this? What if I become her again?" "That's not how it works. You can't unlearn what you've learned. You can't unknow what you're capable of." Cole stood, settling his hat back on his head. "But it's your choice. It should always be your choice. Not your father's, not mine. Yours." He left, and Eleanor was alone with her letters, and her thoughts, and the terrifying freedom of choosing her own future. She didn't sleep that night, and when dawn came, she knew what her answer would be. Eleanor found Samuel in the barn at sunrise, already feeding the horses. He looked up when she entered, his weathered face unreadable. "I'm not going back," she said before she could change her mind. "Not yet. Maybe not ever." Samuel set down the feed bucket slowly. "Your father's offering you everything back. Your reputation, your life. The life he's offering isn't mine anymore." Eleanor's hands twisted the letters she still carried. "I need to write to my mother, tell her I'm staying. But I wanted you to hear it first." "Why?" The question was simple, but the answer wasn't. Eleanor looked around the barn, at the horses she'd learned to feed, at the hay she'd helped stack, at the dirt under her fingernails that no amount of washing could completely remove. "Because for the first time in my life, I'm becoming someone I can actually respect. And I'm not ready to give that up for a world that only wanted me when I was ornamental." Samuel studied her for a long moment, then nodded once. "Rosa's going to work you twice as hard now. She hates wasted potential." "I know," Eleanor almost smiled. "I'm counting on it." She wrote to her mother that afternoon, her hand cramping around the pen as she tried to explain what couldn't really be explained. How calluses felt like victory. How exhaustion could be satisfying. How a man's quiet respect meant more than a ballroom full of admirers. She didn't mention Cole by name, but her mother would read between the lines. She always had. The next morning, Cole appeared in the kitchen while Eleanor was helping Rosa prepare breakfast. "Need you in the north pasture today. We're branding calves." Rosa snorted. "She's never even seen a branding. You'll give her nightmares." "Then she'll learn what ranching actually is. Cole's eyes met Eleanor's. "Unless you want to stay here where it's safe." Eleanor untied her apron. "I'll get changed." The north pasture was chaos. Calves bawling, cowboys shouting, the sharp smell of burning hide mixing with dust and sweat. Martinez and Ben had already roped 2 calves, holding them down while old Pete heated the branding iron in a portable forge. "You're on vaccination duty," Cole said, handing Eleanor a syringe. "After each calf is branded, you inject them right here." He pointed to a spot on a calf's hindquarter. "Push the needle in firm. Inject, pull out. Don't hesitate or you'll hurt them worse." The first calf kicked as Eleanor approached, its eyes rolling white with fear. Her hands shook as she positioned the syringe. "Do it fast," Cole said from beside her, "like pulling off a bandage." Eleanor pushed the needle in, injected, and pulled out. The calf barely flinched. She'd done it. By the 10th calf, her hands had stopped shaking. By the 20th, she was moving with the same efficiency as the men, anticipating which calf would be next, preparing the syringe in advance. "You're a natural," Ben said, grinning at her between ropers. "Better than Tommy was last year, and he grew up on a ranch." Eleanor felt something warm spread through her chest. Pride, simple and uncomplicated. She was good at this. Not because someone had taught her how to be decorative, but because she'd learned to be useful. Cole watched her throughout the day, and when the work was done and the calves were released back to their mothers, he fell into step beside her as they walked back to the ranch. "You surprised me today." "I surprise myself most days now." Eleanor wiped sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand. "Is that how you knew you'd changed? When you stopped recognizing yourself?" "Something like that." Cole was quiet for a moment. "Can I ask you something? About Boston?" "Yes." "Do you miss it? Any of it?" Eleanor thought about her mother's garden parties, about theater performances and museum exhibitions, about the library where she'd spent hours reading. "I miss some of it, the parts that were real. But most of it was performance. Being the right kind of daughter, wearing the right dresses, saying the right things to the right people." She glanced at him. "Out here, no one cares if I'm the right kind of anything. I just have to show up and do the work." "And that's enough?" "It's everything." They walked in comfortable silence until the ranch buildings came into view. Then Cole stopped, his hand catching her arm gently. "Eleanor, I need to tell you something." Her heart kicked hard against her ribs. "All right." "When you first arrived, I thought you'd last a week, maybe 2 if you were stubborn." His thumb brushed unconsciously against her sleeve. "But you've been here over a month now, and you're not just surviving, you're thriving. You're becoming part of this place." "Is that bad?" "No, it's terrifying." Cole's hand dropped. "Because I'm starting to care about what happens to you. More than I should. More than is smart for either of us." Eleanor's breath caught. "Cole?" "I'm not asking for anything," he said quickly. "I just needed you to know. So when I keep my distance, you'll understand it's not because of anything you did wrong. It's because I can't afford to want something I can't have." "What makes you think you can't have it?" The question hung between them, dangerous and electric. Cole's eyes searched her face like he was trying to memorize it. "Because you're Eleanor Wade of Boston, and I'm a ranch foreman who'll never be anything more. Because when you figure out who you really are, you might decide you want that life back. And I can't—" His voice cracked. "I can't lose someone again. I barely survived it the first time." Eleanor stepped closer, closing the distance he'd tried to maintain. "I'm not your wife. I'm not going to die and leave you." "You might leave anyway. People do." "Then that's a risk you have to decide if you're willing to take." Eleanor's hand found his, rough palm against rough palm. "But I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere unless you ask me to." Cole's fingers tightened around hers, and for a moment, Eleanor thought he might kiss her. Instead, he lifted her hand and pressed his lips to her knuckles, a gesture so old-fashioned and tender, it made her chest ache. "I won't ask you to leave," he said quietly, "even when I should." That night, Rosa cornered Eleanor in the kitchen after dinner. "Whatever's happening between you and Cole, be careful." "Nothing's happening. Lying looks terrible on you." Rosa handed her a dish to dry. "I'm not saying don't pursue it. I'm saying know what you're getting into. Cole's not a man who loves halfway. When he commits, it's everything. And when it's taken from him, it destroys him. I'm not planning to hurt him. No one ever plans to. But life has a way of making plans for us." Rosa's expression softened. "Just promise me you'll be honest, with him and with yourself. Don't stay here because you're running from Boston. Stay because you want this life." "I do want it." "Today you do. What about in 6 months, a year, when the newness wears off and it's just hard work and harder winters?" Rosa's eyes were sharp. "When some handsome stranger comes through town and reminds you what it's like to be courted properly, not just looked at by a cowboy who barely knows how to say what he feels." Eleanor's hands stilled on the dish. "You really think I'm that shallow?" "I think you're human, and humans change their minds." Rosa sighed. "I just don't want to watch Cole survive losing someone again. I'm not sure he would." The words haunted Eleanor as she lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling. Was Rosa right? Would she wake up one day and regret choosing calluses over silk gloves? Would she miss the life she'd left behind so completely that staying here would become unbearable? She pressed her mother's locket against her palm, feeling the weight of it. Then she tucked it away in her trunk, under the fancy dresses she never wore anymore. Some questions didn't have answers yet. She'd just have to trust that when they did, she'd make the right choice. 3 days later, Eleanor woke to shouting. She threw on her clothes and ran outside to find the ranch hands scrambling, silhouetted against an orange glow on the eastern horizon. The barn was on fire. "Get the horses out!" Cole's voice cut through the chaos. "Martinez, Ben, start a bucket line from the well. Rosa, get the livestock away from the building." Eleanor ran toward the barn without thinking. Smoke was already pouring through the open doors, and she could hear the horses screaming inside. "Eleanor, no!" Cole grabbed her arm. "It's too dangerous." "There are 8 horses in there," she yanked free. "I'm not letting them burn." She plunged into the smoke before he could stop her, her eyes immediately streaming, her lungs burning. The heat was intense, the crackling of flames growing louder. She found the first stall by memory, fumbling with the latch as smoke blinded her. The horse inside was a young mare named Stella, wild-eyed and panicking. Eleanor grabbed her halter, pulling her toward the door. Stella reared, nearly knocking Eleanor over, but she held on, dragging the terrified animal through the smoke and out into the night. "Take her!" Eleanor shoved the lead rope at Johnny and turned back toward the barn. "Eleanor, don't!" Cole was suddenly there, his face smudged with soot. "The roof's going to collapse." "Then help me get them out faster." They worked together, moving through the smoke-filled barn like dancers in hell. Cole took the stallions, the bigger horses that might trample Eleanor. She handled the gentler ones, talking to them in a voice steadier than she felt, promising them safety she wasn't sure she could deliver. 6 horses out. 7. The smoke was so thick now, Eleanor couldn't see her own hands. She heard the ominous groan of timber overhead. "Eleanor, we have to go!" Cole's hand found hers in the darkness. "The last one's too far back. We can't reach her." Like hell we can't. Eleanor pulled free, stumbling deeper into the barn. The heat was unbearable, the flames climbing the walls, consuming the hay. She found the last stall more by feel than sight. It was Daisy, the old mare who'd carried her on her first cattle drive, who'd been patient with her fumbling and gentle with her fear. "Come on, girl," Eleanor's voice cracked. "We're getting out of here." She got the stall door open, but Daisy wouldn't move. The mare was frozen with terror, her eyes rolling. Eleanor grabbed her mane, pulling with all her strength. Nothing. "Daisy, please!" Eleanor was crying now, smoke and tears mixing on her face. "Please, move!" A beam crashed down 20 feet away, sending up a shower of sparks. Daisy bolted, nearly trampling Eleanor in her panic. Eleanor grabbed for the halter, missed, felt herself falling. Strong arms caught her, lifted her. Cole had come back for her. "I've got Daisy!" Ben's voice came through the smoke. "Get out, now!" Cole ran, carrying Eleanor like she weighed nothing, bursting out of the barn just as part of the roof collapsed behind them. They fell to the ground together, coughing, gasping, alive. The bucket line kept working, fighting to contain the blaze and keep it from spreading to the other buildings. It took 3 hours before the fire was finally under control, leaving nothing but charred timber and smoking ruins where the barn had stood. Eleanor sat in the dirt, her clothes singed, her hands blistered from handling hot metal latches, her lungs raw from smoke. All 8 horses stood in the corral, terrified but alive. Cole dropped down beside her, his face streaked with ash and soot. "That was the stupidest, bravest thing I've ever seen anyone do." "I couldn't let them die." "You almost died yourself." His hand cupped her face, his thumb wiping away soot. "Don't ever do that to me again." "Do what?" "Make me watch you run into a burning building. Make me think I'm going to lose you." His voice was rough with emotion and smoke damage. "Make me realize I can't pretend anymore that I don't—" He stopped, his jaw clenching. "That you don't what?" Eleanor whispered. "That I don't love you." The words came out broken. "God help me, Eleanor. I didn't want to. I tried not to. But I love you. And tonight I thought I was going to have to watch you die, and I can't—" Eleanor kissed him. It wasn't graceful or romantic. They were both filthy, exhausted, tasting smoke and fear. But it was real, more real than anything Eleanor had ever felt in Boston's ballrooms. Cole's hand tangled in her hair, and he kissed her back like a drowning man finding air. When they finally pulled apart, his forehead rested against hers. "Tell me you're staying. Tell me this isn't just adrenaline talking." "I'm staying." Eleanor's hands framed his face. "I chose this life before the fire. I'm choosing it now. I'm choosing you, even though I'm just a ranch foreman? Even though I can't give you mansions or society parties or— You're giving me something better. You're giving me a life I don't have to apologize for." Eleanor pulled back enough to meet his eyes. "I love you too, Cole. I think I have for weeks. I just didn't know how to say it." He kissed her again, softer this time, tender. Around them, the ranch hands had started cleaning up, giving them space. Rosa stood near the remains of the barn, her arms crossed, but Eleanor could see the small smile on her face. Samuel approached as Eleanor and Cole finally stood, still holding hands. "The horses are all accounted for. No injuries except some singed mane on Daisy." He looked at Eleanor. "You saved them. All of them." "We saved them," Eleanor corrected, squeezing Cole's hand. "No." Samuel's voice was firm. "Cole knows what he's doing in a fire. You didn't. You ran in there anyway because you couldn't stand the thought of them suffering. That's not training. That's character." He cleared his throat. "You've more than earned your place here, Eleanor. If you want it." "I do." Eleanor looked around at the destroyed barn, at the exhausted ranch hands, at Cole's smoke-streaked face. "I want all of it." The next morning, Eleanor woke in the pre-dawn darkness to find the letter had been slipped under her door. She recognized Cole's handwriting immediately. Rough, practical, like the man himself. "Eleanor, I'm not good with words, so I'll keep this simple. Last night, when I thought I might lose you, I realized something. I've been living like a ghost for 4 years, going through motions, keeping everyone at arm's length so I wouldn't have to feel anything. Then you showed up, all Boston elegance and determination, and you made me feel again. You made me want things I'd given up on. You made me believe that maybe loss doesn't have to define the rest of my life. I know it's fast. I know we should probably take things slower. But I also know that life doesn't give guarantees, and I don't want to waste whatever time we have being cautious. So I'm asking you straight. Will you let me court you properly? Will you give me the chance to prove I can be the kind of man you deserve? I'll understand if you say no. But I had to ask. Cole." Eleanor pressed the letter to her chest, her heart full of something she couldn't name. It wasn't the fluttering excitement of Boston courtships, all performance and anticipation. It was deeper, steadier, like coming home to a place she'd never been before. She found Cole in the makeshift corral where the horses had spent the night, checking them for injuries in the growing light. He looked up when she approached, his expression guarded. "I got your letter," Eleanor said. "And?" She walked up to him, rose on her toes, and kissed him in full view of anyone who might be watching. When she pulled back, his eyes were wide. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes to all of it." Cole's smile transformed his entire face, making him look younger, lighter. "I don't have much to offer you. No fancy dinners or theater performances. I don't want fancy dinners. I want this." Eleanor gestured around them, at the horses, at the ranch, at the sunrise painting the desert in shades of gold and pink. "I want to wake up and know my work matters. I want to go to bed exhausted because I've actually accomplished something. I want to build a life with someone who sees me as a partner, not a decoration." "You're going to get bored," Cole said, but he was smiling. "6 months from now, you'll be begging me to take you to a dance. Then take me to a dance, but then bring me home to this." Eleanor's hand found his. "I'm not asking for perfection, Cole. I'm asking for real. And this," she squeezed his fingers, "this is the most real thing I've ever had." They stood together as the sun rose fully, painting long shadows across the ranch yard. The barn was gone. The work ahead was enormous, and Eleanor's hands were still blistered from the fire. But for the first time in her life, Eleanor Wade knew exactly who she was, and exactly where she belonged. And it wasn't despite the calluses and the hard work and the man who'd never fit in Boston's ballrooms. It was because of them. The day after the fire, Eleanor stood in the ruined barn with Samuel and Cole, assessing the damage. The smell of smoke still hung thick in the air, and charred timber lay everywhere like broken bones. "We'll need new lumber," Samuel said, his voice heavy. "New tools, new everything. The insurance won't cover half of it." "How much are we short?" Eleanor asked. Samuel looked at her, surprised she'd asked. $3,000, maybe more. Eleanor's mind raced. What if we did the work ourselves, hired only for the specialized labor? We'd still need materials, and the men can't work rebuilding and run the ranch at the same time. Samuel kicked at a piece of charred wood. "I might have to sell off some of the herd to cover it." "No," Cole's voice was sharp. "You sell the herd, you lose your breeding stock. You lose your future." "Then what do you suggest?" Samuel's frustration bled through. "I can't pull money out of thin air." Eleanor thought of her mother's locket, still tucked in her trunk. Thought of the jewelry she'd brought from Boston, the expensive things she'd never wear again. What if we had a barn raising, like the old days? Get the community involved. Both men stared at her. People don't do that anymore, Samuel said. Not for a ranch this size. Why not? You've lived here for 30 years. You've helped half the ranchers in this valley at some point. Eleanor's voice gained strength. If we provide the food and materials, won't people come help build? Cole's eyes lit up. She's right. Martinez's family would come. Ben's father owns the lumber yard. He might give us a discount if we're putting on a community event. And Rosa knows every woman in 3 counties, Eleanor added. If we make it a social event, food, music, dancing after the work's done, people will come. Samuel looked between them, something shifting in his expression. You really think it would work? I think it's worth trying. Eleanor met his gaze steadily. What's the worst that happens? We end up where we already are? All right. Samuel nodded slowly. But you're organizing it. Both of you. If this fails, it's on your heads. Eleanor spent the next week writing letters, visiting neighboring ranches with Cole, and planning logistics with a precision that would have made her Boston social secretary proud. The difference was, this mattered. This wasn't about impressing people with the right china patterns. This was about saving the ranch. Rosa watched her work with something close to approval. You're good at this, making people feel like they want to help instead of being obligated to. I learned from the best manipulators in Boston society. Eleanor sealed another invitation. I just never had a good reason to use those skills before. The invitations went out on Monday. By Wednesday, replies started coming back. By Friday, 17 families had committed to coming, bringing able-bodied men for labor and women for food preparation. I can't believe this is working, Samuel said, reading through the responses. The Johnsons are coming, the Martinezes, even the Crawfords, and they haven't spoken to me in 5 years over a fence dispute. People want to help, Eleanor said. They just need to be asked the right way. Cole found her that evening in the kitchen, where she was making lists of supplies with Rosa. Can you take a break? I want to show you something. They walked out to the corral, where the horses were settling in for the night. The moon was bright enough to see by, casting silver light across the desert. I've been thinking, Cole said, leaning against the fence rail, about what happens after the barn's built. Eleanor's stomach tightened. What do you mean? I mean, right now we're caught up in the crisis, in rebuilding. But eventually things will settle down, and we'll have to figure out what this is. He gestured between them. What we are. I thought we already knew what we are. We know how we feel. That's not the same as knowing how to build a life together. Cole turned to face her fully. I'm a ranch foreman, Eleanor. I make decent wages, but I'll never be rich. I live in a small house on Samuel's property. I don't have much to offer except hard work and honest intentions. That's more than most men offer. Eleanor took his hand. What are you really asking me? I'm asking if you've thought about the future, about what staying here actually means. His thumb traced circles on her palm. Because I'm falling deeper for you every day. And I need to know if you're thinking about this as a temporary adventure or something permanent. Eleanor's breath caught. Cole, I'm not asking you to decide tonight. I just need to know you're thinking about it. His eyes searched hers. Because if this is temporary for you, I need to know now, before I get so tangled up in you that losing you destroys me. It's not temporary. Eleanor stepped closer. I don't know what the future looks like exactly, but I know it includes you. It includes this place. That's not going to change. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything." She rose on her toes, kissing him softly. "Stop waiting for me to leave, Cole. I'm here. I'm staying." He pulled her close, resting his chin on top of her head. "I'm sorry. I just keep expecting the other shoe to drop." "What if there is no other shoe? What if this is just us, building something real?" "Then I'm the luckiest man alive." He held her tighter. "And I promise, I'll try to stop waiting for disaster." The barn raising was set for Saturday. By Friday night, Eleanor had barely slept in 3 days, triple-checking supplies, coordinating food preparation with Rosa and the other ranch wives, and making sure every detail was perfect. "You need to rest," Rosa said, physically removing a ledger from Eleanor's hands. "You'll be no good to anyone if you collapse." "I just need to confirm the lumber delivery." "It's confirmed. I checked. Twice." Rosa pushed Eleanor toward her room. "Sleep. That's an order." Eleanor lay in bed, her mind still racing through lists and logistics. She heard footsteps in the hallway, then a soft knock. "It's me," Cole's voice came through the door. She opened it to find him standing there, looking uncertain. "Is everything all right?" "I couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about tomorrow." He ran a hand through his hair. "Can I come in? Just to talk?" Eleanor stepped aside, letting him in. They sat on her narrow bed, careful to leave space between them despite the late hour. "What if it doesn't work?" Cole asked. "What if people come and we can't get enough done? Or the materials aren't right? Or—" "Then we'll figure it out." Eleanor took his hand. "We've survived worse than a failed barn raising." "Have we?" His voice was raw. "Because this feels bigger somehow. Like we're not just rebuilding a barn, we're proving something." "Proving what?" "That we belong here. That you weren't a mistake coming west. That I'm not just some broken-down widower who can't move forward." Cole looked at their joined hands. "That we deserve this second chance." Eleanor understood then. This wasn't about the barn at all. It was about everything they'd survived to get here. Her exile, his grief, the fire that had almost destroyed them both. "We do deserve it," she said firmly. "And tomorrow, we're going to show everyone exactly what we're capable of." Saturday dawned clear and bright. By 7 in the morning, wagons started arriving, families spilling out with tools and supplies and covered dishes. The women gathered in the kitchen with Rosa, organizing food. The men assembled around the barn site, listening as Cole and Samuel explained the building plan. Eleanor moved between both groups, making sure everyone had what they needed, answering questions, solving small crises before they became large ones. "Eleanor," Mrs. Martinez called from the kitchen, "we need more flour." "Eleanor," Ben shouted from the worksite, "where did we put the extra hammers?" She ran back and forth, her dress already dusty, her hair coming loose from its pins. This was nothing like managing a Boston social event. This was raw, chaotic, real. And she loved every second of it. By noon, the barn's frame was starting to take shape. The men worked in coordinated teams, some cutting lumber, others hammering, still others managing the heavy lifting. Cole moved between them, directing the work with quiet authority. Eleanor was helping serve lunch when she heard a familiar voice behind her. "Eleanor Wade, I almost didn't recognize you." She turned to find Thomas Ashworth standing there, impeccably dressed, completely out of place in the dusty ranch yard. The world seemed to stop. Every sound faded. Eleanor's hands went numb. "What are you doing here?" Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "Looking for you. Your mother told me where you'd gone." Thomas smiled, that same charming smile that had once fooled her. "I came to apologize. To make things right." Cole appeared at Eleanor's side, his presence solid and protective. "Who's this?" "Thomas Ashworth." Thomas extended his hand. A friend of Eleanor's from Boston. Cole didn't take the offered hand. Eleanor doesn't look like she considers you a friend. We had a misunderstanding, one I deeply regret. Thomas's eyes never left Eleanor's face. I've come to bring you home, Eleanor. Your father has arranged everything. Full restoration of your reputation. A formal apology from my family. You can return to Boston with your head held high. She's not going anywhere. Cole's voice was hard. Let her speak for herself. Thomas finally looked at Cole, and Eleanor saw the dismissal in his eyes. Surely you don't expect her to stay here, playing at ranch life, when her real future is waiting for her. Eleanor found her voice. This isn't playing. This is my life. Eleanor, be reasonable. You're a Boston Wade. You belong in society, not... Thomas gestured around at the worksite, the dust, the sweating ranch hands. Not here, doing manual labor like a common servant. Get off this property. Samuel's voice cut through the tension. He'd appeared from the worksite, Martinez and Ben flanking him. You're not welcome here. I'm simply trying to help Eleanor see sense. She sees perfectly clear. Cole stepped forward. And what she sees is that you're a liar who destroyed her reputation to protect your own pride. Now you're gone. Thomas's charming mask slipped, revealing something ugly beneath. You're making a mistake, Eleanor. That foreman might be adequate for a temporary diversion, but he can't give you the life you deserve. He can't give you what I can. You're right. Eleanor's voice was ice. He can't give me lies and betrayal and a life built on appearances. Thank God for that. You'll regret this. Thomas's face flushed. When you're stuck in this godforsaken desert, married to a nobody, working yourself to death, you'll remember you had a chance to come home. I am home. Eleanor moved closer to Cole, her hand finding his. This is where I belong. These are my people. And you need to leave before I ask these men to remove you forcibly. Thomas looked around at the circle of ranch hands who gathered, their faces hard, their hands still holding hammers and tools. He was outnumbered and outmatched, and he knew it. You've changed, he said to Eleanor, and it wasn't a compliment. Yes, she agreed. I have. I'm better now. Thomas left, his carriage disappearing in a cloud of dust. Eleanor stood trembling, Cole's arm around her shoulders, surrounded by people who'd stopped their work to stand with her. You all right? Cole asked quietly. I'm perfect. And she meant it, because facing Thomas Ashworth, the man who'd destroyed her old life, she'd felt nothing but pity for him. He was still trapped in that world of appearances and calculations. She was free. Mrs. Martinez approached, her weathered face kind. That took courage, standing up to him like that. It took anger, Eleanor corrected, and the knowledge that I have people who'll stand with me. You're one of us now, Mr. Crawford said gruffly. He was a man who rarely spoke, and his words carried weight. That man tries to bother you again. He'll answer to all of us. The other ranchers nodded agreement, and Eleanor felt tears prick her eyes. These weren't Boston socialites offering shallow support. These were people who meant what they said, who backed their words with action. Thank you, she managed. All of you. Enough talking, Rosa called from the kitchen. Food's getting cold. Back to work, all of you. The spell broke, and everyone returned to their tasks. But something had shifted. Eleanor had been tested in front of the community, and she'd passed. She wasn't Samuel's charity case anymore. She was theirs. By sunset, the barn frame stood complete, stronger than the original. The men were exhausted. The women were cleaning up from feeding an army, and someone had broken out a fiddle. Music filled the air as families gathered in the ranch yard. Children ran between the adults, playing tag. Young couples paired off to dance. Older folks sat in chairs, watching with satisfied smiles. Cole found Eleanor near the new barn, staring up at what they'd built. "Thinking about what might have been if you'd gone with Ashworth?" "God, no," she laughed. "I'm thinking about how 6 weeks ago I didn't know how to crack an egg without getting shells everywhere. And today, I helped coordinate an event that brought together 50 people to build something that will last for decades." "You did more than coordinate. You made this happen." Cole pulled her into his arms. "You're remarkable, Eleanor Wade." "I'm just stubborn." "Same thing." He kissed her forehead. "Dance with me?" "I don't know how to dance to fiddle music." "I'll teach you." He led her to where couples were spinning in simple patterns. "It's not complicated. Just follow my lead." They danced under the stars, surrounded by the community they'd built and the life they'd chosen. Eleanor stepped on Cole's toes twice, but he just laughed and pulled her closer. "I want to marry you," he said suddenly, the words simple and direct. Eleanor's breath caught. "Cole, I know it's fast. I know we should probably wait. But seeing you face down Thomas Ashworth today, watching you command this whole event, standing here with you in my arms, I don't want to wait." His eyes were serious. "I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to build this life with you officially, not just in spirit. I want everyone to know you're mine and I'm yours." "Yes." The word came out before Eleanor could overthink it. "Yes, I'll marry you." Cole's smile was like sunrise. "You're sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." Eleanor kissed him, not caring who was watching. "I love you, Cole Maddox. Let's build something beautiful together." Around them, the fiddle played on, and people danced, and the new barn stood solid against the desert night. Eleanor had come to New Mexico as a punishment, exiled from everything she'd known. But standing in Cole's arms, surrounded by people who'd chosen to stand with her, she understood something fundamental. Her father had meant to break her with this exile. Instead, he'd set her free. Free to discover who she really was. Free to build a life on her own terms. Free to love a man who saw her not as an ornament or a burden, but as a partner. The barn they'd built today would shelter horses and hay, but Eleanor and Cole were building something more permanent. A future constructed from hard work, honest love, and the unshakable belief that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the best thing that ever could have. The next morning, Eleanor woke to find Rosa sitting on the edge of her bed, arms crossed, expression unreadable. "So you're marrying Cole?" Eleanor sat up, pulling the blanket around her. "News travels fast." "In a community this small? You proposed under the stars in front of 50 witnesses. Everyone knows." Rosa's face softened slightly. "He deserves happiness. God knows he's earned it. But I need to ask you something, and I need the truth." "All right." "Are you marrying him because you love him, or because you're running from who you used to be?" Rosa's eyes were sharp. "Because one of those reasons will last. The other won't." Eleanor met her gaze steadily. "I'm marrying him because when I look at my future, he's in every part of it. Not because he saved me from Boston, but because he saw me when I was covered in flour and chicken manure and still treated me like I mattered." Rosa studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Good answer." She stood, heading for the door. "Wedding's in 2 weeks. I'm making your dress, and you don't get a say in the design. Samuel's already talking to the minister." 2 weeks? That's so fast. Cole's waited 4 years to feel alive again. You think he wants to wait longer than necessary? Rosa paused at the door. Besides, you're living under his roof unmarried. People are already talking. Might as well give them something worth gossiping about. Eleanor spent the morning in a daze, helping with breakfast while the ranch hands grinned knowingly at her. Martinez clapped Cole on the back so hard he nearly choked on his coffee. Ben kept making terrible jokes about wedding nights, until old Pete told him to shut up. "Ignore them," Cole said when they finally had a moment alone in the barn. "They're just happy someone's fool enough to marry me." "I'm the fool?" Eleanor leaned against a stall door. "I'm marrying a man I've known for 2 months." "Having second thoughts already?" "Not even for a second." She pulled him closer. "But I do need to write to my mother. Tell her I'm getting married. She deserves to hear it from me, not from gossip that reaches Boston eventually." Cole's expression shifted. "Do you want her to come? For the wedding?" Eleanor hadn't even considered it. The thought of her mother here, seeing this life, meeting these people, it felt like mixing oil and water. "I don't know," she admitted. "Part of me wants her to see what I've built. Another part wants to keep this separate, safe from judgment." "She's your mother, Eleanor. Whatever happened between you and your father, she believed you. She gave you her grandmother's locket." Cole touched the chain around Eleanor's neck. She'd started wearing it again after the fire. "Maybe she deserves to see you happy." Eleanor wrote the letter that afternoon, her hand shaking slightly as she formed the words. "Dear Mama, I'm getting married. His name is Cole Maddox, and he's the foreman of the ranch where I've been working. Before you worry that I'm making another impulsive mistake, let me tell you about him. He's kind without being soft, strong without being cruel. He sees me, not the Eleanor Wade of Boston society, but the woman I'm becoming out here. The woman who can brand cattle and bake bread and stand up to men like Thomas Ashworth without flinching. The wedding is in 2 weeks. I know that's not enough time for you to travel here, and I understand if Father forbids you from coming. But I wanted you to know. I wanted you to hear from me that I'm happy. Truly, deeply happy, in a way I never was in Boston. The ranch life is hard, Mama. My hands are calloused, and my face is sunburned, and I go to bed exhausted every night. But I wake up every morning knowing exactly who I am and what I'm worth. That's something I never had before. If you can come, I would love to have you here. If you can't, I'll understand. Either way, know that your daughter is loved, valued, and finally free. Your Eleanor." She posted the letter the next day, not expecting a response in time for the wedding. The mail took 2 weeks each way, and even if her mother left immediately, she'd never make it. So Eleanor was shocked when, 8 days before the wedding, a telegram arrived. "Arriving March 14th. Stop. Your father sends his blessing. Stop. Bringing your wedding dress. Stop. Mama." Eleanor read it 3 times, her hands trembling. "She's coming. My mother's coming." Rosa looked up from her sewing. "And your father?" "Just his blessing, not him." Eleanor wasn't sure if she felt relieved or disappointed. "She's bringing my wedding dress. The one we had made for—" She stopped, the memory bitter. "For a wedding that never happened," Rosa finished gently. "To a man who didn't deserve you."
"I don't want to wear that dress. It belongs to someone I'm not anymore."
"Then tell her. Tell her you want something different." Rosa held up the simple white dress she'd been working on. "Tell her you want this. Something you earned in your new life, not something from your old one." Eleanor's mother arrived on the afternoon stage, looking exactly as Eleanor remembered. Elegant, composed, her traveling suit impeccable despite the long journey. But when she stepped down and saw Eleanor waiting, her composure shattered. "Oh, my darling girl!" She pulled Eleanor into her arms, and Eleanor felt 6 years old again, safe and loved. "Let me look at you." She held Eleanor at arm's length, her eyes scanning her daughter's face. Eleanor knew what she saw. Sun-darkened skin, work-roughened hands, a sturdiness that hadn't existed in Boston. "You look so different," her mother said. "I am different." "I can see that." Her mother's eyes filled with tears. "You look happy, Eleanor. I've never seen you look so happy." They walked back to the ranch together, Eleanor's mother asking questions about everything: the work, the people, the land itself. Eleanor answered honestly, not hiding the hardships or pretending the life was easier than it was. "And this man you're marrying, Cole Maddox, tell me about him." Eleanor thought about how to describe Cole to someone who'd never met anyone like him. "He's nothing like the men in Boston. He doesn't care about my family name or my social connections or whether I can plan a perfect dinner party. He cares that I show up for work every morning, that I don't quit when things get hard, that I'm honest with him and with myself." "Do you love him?" "More than I knew was possible." Her mother smiled, squeezing Eleanor's hand. "Then that's all that matters." But when they reached the ranch and Cole came out to meet them, Eleanor saw her mother's face flicker with something. Not quite disapproval, but reservation. Cole was dusty from working in the new barn, his shirt stained with sweat, his hands calloused and rough. He removed his hat, his manners impeccable despite his appearance. "Mrs. Wade, it's an honor to meet you." Eleanor's mother shook his hand, her breeding making her gracious even as Eleanor could see her taking in every detail: the cheap cotton shirt, the worn boots, the sun-weathered face that looked a decade older than Cole's actual 32 years. "Mr. Maddox, my daughter speaks very highly of you." "She's being generous. I'm a lucky man." Cole's arm went around Eleanor's waist, a gesture of possession and protection. "I'll make sure she's taken care of, Mrs. Wade. I promise you that." "I don't doubt your sincerity, Mr. Maddox, but taking care of my daughter in the way she's accustomed to—" "Mama," Eleanor's voice was firm, "Cole takes care of me in the ways that matter. He treats me as an equal partner. He values my work and my opinions. He doesn't want me to be decorative. He wants me to be real." Her mother looked between them, and Eleanor saw the moment she understood. This wasn't some rebellion or desperate escape. This was love, built on mutual respect and shared hardship.
"I brought your wedding dress," her mother said quietly. "But looking at you now, I'm not sure it fits anymore. I'd like you to see the one Rosa made for me." Eleanor gestured toward the house. "It's different from what we planned in Boston, but it's perfect for who I am now." That evening, Eleanor tried on Rosa's dress while her mother watched. It was simple white cotton with delicate embroidery at the collar and cuffs. Practical enough to wear again after the wedding, beautiful enough to make Eleanor feel special. "It's lovely," her mother said, and Eleanor could hear the catch in her voice. "You look like yourself, your real self." "The dress from Boston, we can sell it. Use the money for the ranch." Eleanor turned, letting Rosa adjust the hem. "That feels right somehow, turning that old life into something useful for this one." Her mother pulled out a handkerchief, dabbing her eyes. "Your father regrets everything, Eleanor. He's written you a dozen letters he never sent. He's afraid you'll never forgive him." "I don't know if I can." Eleanor's voice was steady. "He chose his pride over his daughter. That's not something I can just forget." "I'm not asking you to forget. I'm asking you to consider that people make mistakes. Terrible, unforgivable mistakes. And sometimes they spend the rest of their lives trying to make amends." Eleanor thought about Cole, carrying the weight of his wife's death for 4 years. About Samuel, still mourning the daughter who'd left. About herself, learning to forgive her own naivety in trusting Thomas Ashworth. "Tell him I'm happy. Tell him I found a life I'm proud of. Maybe someday that will be enough." Eleanor met her mother's eyes. "But I'm not coming back to Boston. This is my home now." "I know, darling."
Her mother touched Eleanor's cheek. "I knew it the moment I saw you. You found where you belong." The wedding was held in the new barn, which seemed fitting. The same community that had built it gathered to witness Eleanor and Cole's marriage. The minister from town performed the ceremony while afternoon light streamed through the new windows. Eleanor wore Rosa's dress and her mother's locket. Cole wore his best shirt, freshly pressed, his hair slicked back with water that was already drying in the warm air. Samuel stood up with Cole. Rosa stood with Eleanor. "Do you, Eleanor Wade, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" Eleanor looked into Cole's eyes, seeing her entire future reflected there. "I do." "And do you, Cole Maddox, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" "I do." Cole's voice was rough with emotion. "Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Cole kissed her gently, reverently, like she was something precious. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Martinez let out a whoop. Ben threw his hat in the air. Eleanor pulled back, looking at her husband. God, her husband. And felt complete in a way she'd never experienced. This wasn't the fairy tale Boston had promised, with wealth and status and social prominence. This was better. This was real. The celebration lasted until well after dark. Food and music and dancing filled the barn they'd built together. Eleanor's mother sat with Rosa, the two women from completely different worlds, finding common ground in their love for Eleanor. "She's happy here," Eleanor heard Rosa say. "Happier than I've ever seen anyone." "I can see that." Her mother's voice was quiet. "I just wish her father could see it too. Wish he could understand that we didn't lose her. We just didn't know how to keep her." Cole found Eleanor near midnight, pulling her away from the celebration. "Come with me. I want to show you something." He led her to a small house Eleanor had noticed but never entered, the foreman's house, where Cole had lived alone for 4 years. He opened the door, and Eleanor saw he'd transformed it. Fresh curtains hung in the windows. A new quilt covered the bed. Wildflowers sat in a jar on the table. "This is ours now," Cole said. "I know it's not much compared to what you had in Boston." Eleanor silenced him with a kiss. "It's perfect. It's everything." They stood in the doorway of their home, the sounds of celebration drifting through the night air. Cole's arms wrapped around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. "I keep thinking this is a dream," he said, "that I'll wake up and you'll be gone." "I'm not going anywhere. You're stuck with me." Eleanor turned in his arms. "For better or worse, remember?" "Definitely better." He kissed her forehead. "You saved me, Eleanor. I was just existing before you came, going through motions. You made me want to live again." "You saved me too, from a life where I would have spent forever trying to be what other people wanted. You let me be myself." 2 days after the wedding, Eleanor's mother prepared to return to Boston. They stood together on the platform, waiting for the stage. "I'll write," Eleanor promised. "Every week. I'll tell you everything. The work, the ranch, the life we're building." "I'll write back." "And Eleanor," her mother took her hands, "I'm proud of you. I know I didn't say that enough when you were growing up. I was so focused on making sure you fit into society that I never stopped to ask if that was what you wanted. I'm sorry for that." "It's all right, Mama. I needed to leave to figure out who I really was." "Well, you've certainly done that," her mother smiled through tears. "You've become a remarkable woman, stronger than I ever was. "You gave me the locket. You believed me when no one else did. That took strength." "Not enough. I should have fought harder for you." "You're fighting now. That's what matters."
Eleanor hugged her tightly.
"Thank you for coming."
"Thank you for seeing this life and not asking me to give it up." The stage arrived, and Eleanor helped her mother board. As it pulled away, Eleanor waved until it disappeared from sight, feeling the bittersweet ache of loving someone who lived in a world you'd left behind. Cole was waiting when she got back to the ranch, working in the corral with a new horse. He looked up when she approached, reading her face instantly. "You all right?" "I'm perfect." And she meant it. Saying goodbye to her mother hurt, but it didn't shake her certainty about the choice she'd made. "Just missing her already." "She can visit again. The door's always open." Eleanor climbed the fence to sit on the rail, watching Cole work. "Do you ever regret it? Choosing this life instead of something easier?" "Every damn day." He gentled the horse with patient hands. "And then the sun comes up, and I get to do work that matters. And I remember why I'm here." He looked at her. "Especially now. Now I get to wake up next to you. That makes every hard day worth it." 3 months later, Eleanor stood in the ranch kitchen with Rosa, preparing bread for the hands. She'd just finished kneading when a wave of nausea hit her so hard she had to grip the counter. Rosa's eyes sharpened. "How long?" "How long what?" "Don't play stupid. When was your last monthly?" Eleanor froze, counting backward in her head. 6 weeks. Maybe 7. She'd been so busy with the wedding and settling into married life that she hadn't noticed. "You're pregnant," Rosa said, not a question. "I might be." Eleanor's hand went to her stomach. "I'm not certain yet." "I'm certain. I've seen enough pregnant women to know." Rosa's expression softened. "Does Cole know?" "Not yet. I want to be sure before I tell him." But Cole knew something was different. That night in their small house, he pulled her close and asked, "What's going on? You've been quiet all evening." Eleanor took a breath. "I think I might be pregnant." Cole went very still. "You think?" "I'm late. And this morning, I got sick from the smell of bacon." "Rosa says she's sure, but I wanted to wait before telling you." Cole kissed her, deep and thorough, and full of joy. When he pulled back, his eyes were wet. "We're having a baby?" "It looks that way." He dropped to his knees, pressing his face against her stomach. Eleanor's hands went to his hair, holding him as his shoulders shook. She realized he was crying. "Cole, are you all right?" "I thought I'd lost this. After Sarah died, I thought I'd never have a family again." His voice was muffled against her dress. "And now I have you, and a baby, and a life I actually want to live. I don't know what I did to deserve this." "You survived. You kept going when it would have been easier to give up. You opened your heart again, even though it terrified you." Eleanor pulled him to his feet, wiping his tears with her thumbs. "You deserve every bit of happiness, Cole Maddox, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you have it." 6 months later, Eleanor stood in the barn helping Cole with the evening feeding, her stomach round and obvious under her work dress. She moved slower now, but she still refused to stop working entirely. "You should be resting," Cole said for the 100th time. "I'm pregnant, not dying. I can scatter hay." A rider appeared in the yard, the mail carrier. He handed Cole a telegram, tipping his hat to Eleanor before riding on. Cole read it, his expression unreadable. "It's from your father." Eleanor's heart jumped.
What does it say? Request permission to visit daughter and son-in-law. Desire to make amends. Will accept any answer. Your father. Cole handed her the telegram. What do you want to do? Eleanor stared at the words, feeling the weight of everything that had passed between them. The exile, the months of silence, the shame he'd tried to force her to carry. But she also thought about her mother's words,
About people making terrible mistakes and spending their lives trying to make amends. About second chances and forgiveness and the grace she'd been given when she'd arrived here, broken and desperate. Tell him he can come, after the baby's born. She looked at Cole. But he comes to our home, on our terms. He sees this life and either accepts it or he doesn't. I won't pretend to be someone I'm not anymore. Cole pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. That's my girl. Their daughter was born on a cold January night, delivered by Rosa, with Cole holding Eleanor's hand through every moment. They named her Sarah Grace. Sarah for Cole's first wife, Grace for the mercy they'd all been given. When Eleanor's father arrived 3 weeks later, he found his daughter nursing her baby in a small house with rough wooden floors, wearing a simple dress and an apron stained with spit-up. The Eleanor Wade he'd known would have been horrified. This Eleanor just smiled and invited him in. "Papa, meet your granddaughter." Her father stood in the doorway, his expensive suit and polished shoes absurdly out of place. Eleanor saw him take in everything. The modest furniture, the worn rugs, the life his daughter had built so far from the one he'd planned for her. "Eleanor," his voice cracked, "I'm sorry. For all of it. For not believing you. For sending you away. For choosing pride over my own child." "I know you are." Eleanor adjusted Sarah in her arms. "Mama told me. Can you ever forgive me?" Eleanor looked at her father, this man who'd once held all the power in her world. She saw him differently now, not as the final authority, but as a flawed human who'd made catastrophic mistakes. "I'm working on it," she said honestly. "But I need you to understand something. This life," she gestured around the small house, "this is what I chose. Not as punishment or rebellion. I chose it because it makes me happy. Because I'd rather be valued for what I can do than admired for who my family is. Because I love a man who sees me as a partner, not a possession." Cole entered then, back from checking the horses. He stopped when he saw Eleanor's father, his body instinctively protective. "Papa, this is my husband, Cole Maddox. Cole, my father." The two men shook hands, sizing each other up. Her father spoke first. "You take care of my daughter?" "I try to deserve her every day," Cole said simply. Eleanor saw something shift in her father's expression. Recognition, maybe, that Cole loved his daughter in a way Thomas Ashworth never could have. That this life, however different from what he'd imagined, had given Eleanor something Boston never had. "Can I hold her?" her father asked, his voice thick with emotion. "My granddaughter?" Eleanor handed Sarah over, watching her father cradle the tiny baby with the same careful tenderness he'd shown when Eleanor herself was born. She saw tears on his cheeks. "She's beautiful. She looks like you did." "She looks like herself," Eleanor corrected gently. "And she'll grow up knowing she can be whoever she wants to be. That's the gift Cole and I are giving her." Her father stayed for 3 days, sleeping in the ranch house with Samuel, eating meals with the hands, watching Eleanor work alongside Rosa in the kitchen. On his last day, he pulled Eleanor aside. "I was wrong about everything. About what you needed, about what would make you happy, about what a good life looks like." He took her hands. "You've built something real here, Something that matters. I'm proud of you, Eleanor. I should have said that years ago, but I'm saying it now. Thank you, Papa. Eleanor hugged him, feeling years of hurt begin to soften. That means more than you know. As his carriage pulled away, heading back to Boston and a life that felt like it belonged to someone else entirely, Eleanor stood with Cole's arm around her waist and Sarah sleeping against her shoulder. No regrets? Cole asked. Eleanor looked around at the ranch that had become her home, at the barn they'd built together, at the horses in the corral, at the mountains rising in the distance. She thought about the woman who'd arrived here 8 months ago, broken and ashamed, and the woman she'd become, strong, capable, loved. Not a single one. She turned to kiss her husband. This is exactly where I'm supposed to be. And standing there in the New Mexico sunshine, holding her daughter and her husband, Eleanor Wade Maddox understood the truth her father's exile had revealed. She hadn't been sent west as a punishment. She'd been set free to discover who she really was, beneath the expectations and appearances. She'd been given the chance to build a life on her own terms, with a man who valued her strength instead of her compliance. What her father had meant as destruction had become her salvation, and the cowboy who'd been tasked with teaching her humility had instead shown her what it meant to be truly valued, deeply loved, and finally, completely whole.